Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. We have to start off in my case for what's going on right now. I think it would be almost a dereliction of duty if we didn't start with one of the prescient things in this country right now, and that is, of course, El Senor George Floyd. And why is that? Because this has had an impact on people, specifically black people and people of color. Until you understand what you saw on that video, until you understand the depths of what you saw on that video and how it comes across to people who feel, my God, in daylight, in daylight with people watching, somebody says, I have the power to take you out under the assumption that it will be okay. I want people to understand that first of all. Understand that that is what many people are feeling today. And worse, we started to get other videos that show that what the cops have said in the first place in their report was a complete lie. A complete lie as far as what was in that report. He is resisting arrest, and we have video that show he's calmly sitting on the ground. He's resisting arrest, and that's why we have the knee on his neck. Come on. If you can't understand why people feel the way that they feel, you can't understand why people are fearful, if you can't understand, if that were you, I say let's learn to have some empathy. So what is the show about today? The title of the show today is Black Lives Must Matter. That's the name of the show today, Black Lives Must Matter. And the second part of the show, Nancy Pelosi shows how it's done. I have a cut that I did with Nancy Pelosi that shows how this woman, I respect her political savvy. I respect her intellect. I don't always agree with her because I don't think she's as progressive as she should be. But my God, I was so happy to see how she handled a good person, Andrea Mitchell, today. So we'll talk about that in the second part. But we got to start with George Floyd. Why is George Floyd not just another dead black man not murdered or murdered by a cop? I have a little mistake in there. Why is George Floyd not just another dead black man murdered by a cop? There was a special evil in the video that shocked all Americans who decided that they wanted to take off the colored glasses. They wanted to no longer be willfully ignorant. They wanted to finally see, oh my God, you mean we have been willfully ignorant to how what really goes down? That is what it was all about. A lot of we've had a lot of the police assassinating black men and Latino men before. We've had the assassination for a long time. But now they see a guy rejoicing in what can only be called a murder on display. He wanted you to see him. He didn't necessarily want the guy to die, but he wanted to see him putting that guy out. That's what he wanted. He wanted to see a dead black body with black people out there saying, no, please stop, stop, stop. No, I'm in power. My hands are in my pocket and my knees on his neck. How else can you see it? I have the blog of the week today is going to be a friend of mine. Tacho Medellin wrote it better than I could, because the state of my mind right now, when I saw that thing, I started to write and said, nah, I can't quite do that. I can't quite do that. I didn't want to say what I wanted to say. Sometimes you have to be careful when you have the exposure of your blogs all over the place that lives on forever. You got to be very careful with what you put out there because it lives with you. And I wasn't in the right frame of mind to write what I wanted to write, and Tacho Medellin did a perfect job in writing it. Anyway, the second part, Nancy Pelosi used her interview skills to challenge the media. She challenged Twitter. America saw a picture of itself. One cannot hide from the treatment of black bodies in real time. And in that officer's eyes as he murdered George Floyd was a reflection of Amy Cooper's rationale for calling 911. Check it out. I want you to hear what I just said. And remember who Amy Cooper is? Amy Cooper is that woman who called 911 when that black guy asked her to put a leash on her dog. So here's the conflation. In that officer's eyes, as he murdered George Floyd, was a reflection of Amy Cooper's rationale for calling 911. You see, that police officer was simply the enforcer. That police officer was simply the enforcer of those who perceived themselves as superior to others, black bodies, Asian bodies, Latino bodies, indigenous bodies. You must not. So what I want to do, I want to play a piece. I did some cuts on something Eddie Glaude did today. And I was about 2 minutes. It finished processing 2 minutes before the show started. So I was a bit frazzled in getting it cropped in here. So what I'm going to do as I'm speaking, I'm sort of cropping that thing the video that I just processed, because I want you to see this. I kind of lost the TV thing that I normally do in the video, but that's okay. We don't need it for effects. This is real. This is real. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
It has been now more than 5 years since we saw those mass protests in Ferguson, Missouri, over the death of Michael Brown. Since then, Eric Garner, Walter Scott, Ahmaud Arbery. We could go on for the rest of the hour. Too many cases to name. Are you as confident as Stephen Jackson there that we have reached a tipping point?
Not really, Craig. And I understand his passion, but we need to read this moment as, in some ways, the consequence of a mode of policing, Craig. So when we think about the death of George Floyd, we have to put it in the context of 12 alleged misconduct on the part of that police officer, where he was not held accountable. We have to think about it within the context of a broader form of policing. For example, you can't understand the death of Laquan McDonald in Chicago without understanding what they were doing at the black site, without understanding a form of policing where folk weren't held accountable. You can't understand Chicago policing in some ways without understanding 20 years of corruption with John Burge. You can't understand what happened in LA without ramparts. You can't understand, in some ways, what is going on in the country with regards to a certain kind of policing when Jeff Sessions, releases the police departments from consent decrees. New Orleans, Cleveland, Los Angeles, Newark, Chicago. Right? So part of what I'm saying here is that when we see this kind of act, when we see this kind of devastation, it is actually the result of systemic problems in our country with regards to policing, Craig. So we have to be more, shall we say, discerning in how we talk about the ways in which certain communities are policed in this country.
What should we be expecting from our mayors, from our governors, the President of the United States?
I think we just need to hold people accountable. If police can act with impunity in our communities, trot over our civil rights, treat us as if we're not valued, then these sorts of actions will eventually happen. And when they do happen, as we've seen over and over again, Craig, they get off. Eric Garner's murder, or his death, the police officer wasn't held to account. Tamir Rice's death, the police officer wasn't held to account. In fact, he got another job, even though he backed out of it later. Darren Ferguson wasn't held to account. So part of what we have to do is begin to hold folk accountable so that people can have a belief in the system, right? But we also need to think, how can I put this, Craig? And this is going to be hard to say, we have to confront the reality that every time this stuff is revealed, people clutch their pearls. Right? It happens over and over again, and people say, oh my God, is this America? And you kind of say, well, what America are you living in? And then you have to ask the question, Do they really want to change? Do they really want to see what's happening to us? Because if they do, will it reveal who they are? And that's a difficult question to grapple with.
I want to contrast what we're seeing in Minneapolis with what we saw in places like Michigan, because one of the things that continues to strike me is you see these armed protesters holding these huge demonstrations at state houses. But what does appear to be different is in how law enforcement is responding to protests like that versus the protests that we've seen in Minneapolis. Why is that?
I've been grappling with this. They're showing constraint. There's one image of a man they're trying to arrest and handcuff. He has a gun, he has a weapon on his side, and he's refusing to allow them to put him in cuffs. And they're so gentle. We think about, the murder in Charlottesville, at the Episcopal Church, Dylan Roof, and how they handled him and the like. It's as if some people are accorded the rights of citizenship and other folks are just expected to be obedient. As if some folks got the right to protest and we should just be grateful. Think about it. Folk were more angry at Colin Kaepernick for taking a knee than they were with the police officers who engaged in the act. It's as if we black folk are supposed to be thankful for our positions, obedient, and we should hush up when we feel a sense of wrongdoing directed towards us. You can't help but think that. These folk ended up in the state capitol, Craig, with automatic weapons, and they were treated with kid gloves. And that's all we wanted, is just the officer to be arrested. Look what it took to get the killers of Ahmaud Arbery arrested. It reveals that for some people in this country, that our lives are just not as valued. Our voices are just not as valued, that we aren't as valued.
Now think about that. Think about that. And I'd like anybody to think there is something wrong with what he has to say. I think he hit the nail on the head. Anyway, this morning I woke up and, in scanning my thread, I came across an article, right? And it turns out to be, I saw the name of the article. And when I saw the name of the article, I said, the title of the article is Just Another Kill for the Ellie Trophy Case. Okay? And I said, and it had a picture of George Floyd on it. And I said, wow. And then I looked at it again and it's like, oh, it's my friend who wrote this article from doscentavos.net. Doscentavos.net. Tacho Medellin. And that is actually what I want to be my blog of the day. I don't do the blog of the day often as I used to, but I'm doing it today because I loved what he had to say. So here it goes. It's time for the weekly blog post. Okay, the title of the blog post by Tacho Medellin. It's called, are you ready? Ready. Just another kill for the trophy case. And actually, let me go ahead and put that on the screen also so you can see it. So you can see, here's the website. Doscentavos.net is the website. Check it out. He writes a lot of good stories, local stories, other stories, national stories. And he said, whatever the media is showing on your TVs really are not the final words of George Floyd, murdered by law enforcement at the age of 46. Among George's last words as a cop's knee pressed into his neck for 9 minutes were, "Mama, Mama." That was before the sounds coming out of him became agonizing moans. And that was before he was flopped onto a stretcher, his neck snapping before the cop, obviously not an EMT tech, grabbed hold of his head so it would stop flopping around as he was placed on the stretcher before he was placed in the ambulance. He probably remembered he was on camera. George Floyd is another black person in an ever-growing long line of victims of police brutality and state-sanctioned murder. He joins names like Ahmaud Arbery, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, and Michael Brown. As George is connected to Houston, one should also remember names like John Hernandez and Nicolas Chavez, who were killed by local law enforcement. These cop-led murders happen so often that it is easy to become desensitized to them. And that is what scares me, the desensitization. It's the same thing that is happening in the COVID deaths right now. 100,000 plus people dead. If this were Vietnam and we said 1,000 people died today, 1,300 people died yesterday, 1,400 people died the day before, 3,000 people died the day before, we would be screaming. But in the new evil under Donald Trump, in the new evil of today, we keep throwing the evil at you. We keep throwing the evil at you. And suddenly now, the evils, you are desensitized to the evil. The body copes, the mind copes. And that is a scary thing. The killing of black men, the killing of Latinos, the killing of other people become, as long as it's not somebody who looks like the majority, the killing of these people somehow now becomes okay. You can take it. Hell, even black people don't go as crazy as they did when these murders started happening when they started becoming visible over and over and over again. So repeating Tacho Medellin's sentence paragraph, which makes so much sense. These cop-led murders happening so often that it is easy to become desensitized to them. Even when there is video, one has a choice to become numb to reality or allow emotions to take over. But one doesn't experience the depths of humanity until you see a person calling out for his mother and at the hands of the murderer. Oh yeah, that kind of thing has been portrayed in romanticized versions of war. The fresh-faced white kid with his guts shot out calling out for his mom. But this is real life. And it's the good guys who are doing the killing. But it's the good guys who have all the defenses in the world. Whether it's some puffed up media savvy police chief or some loudmouth annoying cops union rep, they will defend their bad apples until they can't. Until there's video that is compelling enough to make them do something, or at the very least makes them shut their mouths. But even when the people respond and protest, it is the same cops who allow white supremacists to protest with high-powered weapons at our government buildings, who then tear gas and respond violently to black and brown protesters who are simply petitioning government for a redress of grievances. And their own trade media defends law enforcement and makes them out to be the victims to the delight of racist and law and order types. Because obviously, it's the dead who are the bad guys, right? I am pretty much at the end of my trust threshold when it comes to law enforcement. Even if I do have friends and relatives in law enforcement. Whether I hear someone running for sheriff or someone wanting to be a leader in government over law enforcement, I want to hear about how they are going to change the culture of law enforcement. How they are going to stop the killing for no reason of black and brown people. And then I want to see them do it. The usual brown nosing for police union endorsement doesn't give me much hope at this point. One who wants to lead needs to lead the way for change. It is that simple. That was authored by Tacho Medellin at doscentavos.net. Folks, visit doscentavos.net. Good writing by my friend Tacho Medellin. Look, it is hurtful. When I got up this morning, and read what Tacho had to say, I then wrote a pertaining piece for that. I went ahead and wrote a little something, and I said in that piece that I wrote, my friend Tacho Medellin of Dos Centavos wrote a much more cogent, in a much more cogent manner, what I would have similarly written today about just another kill. I continued to increasingly rage internally, and reading Tacho this morning deconstruct the issue was very comforting. Many of us understand. Tacho said something in concert with, but more civilly than I said on Tuesday's Politics Done Right program. And I read his piece, so you know what he said. But what I want you to do is listen to the part that I did yesterday. Let me go ahead and play it. I think it'll play. I have relative.
Looking to buy a home?
Okay.
The process couldn't
Not doing
be
the commercial
easier
part
with
now.
Colonial's new
Okay, let's
online
see if I
mortgage
can get it up.
application.
There we go. Relatives that are cops, relatives that are detectives in New York and elsewhere. Okay, they're the good ones. I don't know who the bad ones are, so I have to assume all are bad. For my sake, for my sanity, for my life, I have to make that assumption. And people always say, well, yeah, but most of them are good. But no, most of them are not good. One of my relatives that's an officer says, I'm going to tell you something. Most are not good. And he said the blue line of silence is absolutely true. And he said the biggest thing that's holding it together is fear. Fear among officers, whoever you are, to rat. Because we know all the bad ones. And I said, so why don't you turn them in? He said, then your life is over. Then your life is over. Let me tell you, no, most of them are not good. We like to say that, oh, most officers are good. Most officers have the semblance of goodness. But one of the traits to become an officer many times is that of having to be in command over someone else. And look, officers are important. When a bad dude is around me, I want that badass officer to be there to protect me. But I also want that badass officer to know that if he's not following the law, I don't care about his character. I don't care about the officer's character, because I know inherent to many officers is that thing of having to have domination over you. That's an inherent trait that can be tailored for good or tailored for bad. The trait in general can be tailored for good or tailored for bad. And the law allows that trait the way we want to, meaning if that law is not followed, that officer, whether the trait is used for bad or good, is placed under whatever it needs to be. So what I'm not trying to say we want all these sanctified folks as police officers. We don't and we won't. But we have laws to say you will work under these constructs. When it comes to the bad guy, we want the bad guy taken care of. But when it comes to the good guy, if you ever dare go over the line, you'll pay for it. And that itself must be the deterrent from the police officers from doing that. And the idea that black people and people of color get different treatments from police officers, there is a reason. Black lives matter. We have to remind people it's just as valuable as any other life. It has the same pains, it bleeds the same thing. But too many in America have been fooled into believing that there is something different. Too many. And it was done to rule you, not only black folk. It was done to rule white people. Because in your sense of superiority over a sect, the people who really run it all can control you both. But you know what is interesting? And I've always said this, and some people don't get it. The people we've taught many white people to fear black bodies, right? That is what a lot have been done in America. They've taught white people to fear black bodies. It's one of the craziest things. I want you guys to look at the numbers. Fearing black people is the craziest thing for white people to do. My white brothers and my white sisters, I sit down there and wonder, in America, the people who are under control with the whip, the people who are locked up, the people who are made to do things, were black folk. The people who were enslaved, black, Latinos. And I'm not talking about physical, legal slavery, but all the other types of slavery. Black, Latinos, Chinese. And you say you fear. You fear. You fear the black man. Oh, big black man is going to hurt you. But who has been the person? Who have been the persons hurt in this country? Think about it. The people that should be the most fearful are black people. Should be scared as hell under your tenets, under the tenets that the white masters of society would like to impose on you. The people that should be in fear for their lives are black people. It's black people that gets gunned down by the police officer. There's a joke. There's a video that came out a few times ago, right? That said, hey, wait a minute. This white cop stopped this white girl in a car. And the white girl kept her hands on the steering wheel. And, you know, smart cookie girl. Love the girl. She kept her hands on the steering wheel. And the officer says, give me your license. She looked at the officer and said, officer, can I take my hands off the wheel to go ahead and give you my license? The officer said, come on now. We only kill black people. Now, I am smart enough to know that the officer was joking with that girl. But there's a certain poetic justice to what he said. Because in putting that, there's a reality to that joke. When was the last time you saw a white person gunned down by a cop in a car incident, in some sort of an incident? You don't see that. And that's the issue. You don't see that. You don't see that. But anyhow, so I wanted to replay that piece that we did from Tuesday because it is important. You know, we have been taught. We've been taught to see things in a certain way, and most of the times it makes no sense the way we've been taught. We've been taught to fear black folk. You know, imagine you fear the people that you were able to subjugate for a very, very long time. Not to say that any particular group is weak or anything like that, but I'm saying if we look at what has happened in the country, the people that need to fear the most aren't white people. Black people have to fear the most because most have been done to them negatively. Indigenous people, another group of people that many fear, are the ones who they should fear as well. But the reason that they have taught many in this country this other things is to maintain control. You don't get a chance to see who your real oppressor are. All Americans are at some level of oppression. That's how capitalism works. All Americans are at some level of oppression. Capitalism depends on that to work. Otherwise, you wouldn't give away your intellect, your labor, and all of that, while somebody else who does nothing takes it all. So you only can have capitalism if you have mass hysteria, if you have fear, and all of that. Otherwise, you would not allow a billionaire to make all the money he makes on your back because he didn't make it, you did. Yes, he deserves a profit. Everybody deserves a profit. But he didn't get a profit. He became a slave owner. All of us all being the slave. Very, very, very important concept that I wish people would understand. And then they will get off this defend capitalism at all costs. Anyhow, let's get out of the topic of George Floyd because I think everybody knows where we're at. Everybody knows what has to get done. Whether we get it done, that's what we'll all try. But let's go ahead and talk about my good friend Nancy Pelosi. You know, I have a love-hate relationship with Nancy Pelosi. But you know what? I think she is probably the best Speaker of the House, bar none. Yeah, women, I think, make better politicians. I'll just be blunt. I will just be blunt. But before, let me salute everybody. Before I get to Nancy, let me tell everybody hi here. I love to say hi to my people. Lawrence Sims, welcome aboard. Troy Astro, welcome aboard. Let's see. Norman Reynolds, welcome aboard. Rose William, welcome aboard. Paul Fleming, welcome aboard. And anybody else want me to call them out? You got to get. Hey, Curtis Jacobs, welcome aboard. Anybody else want to be called out? Please go ahead, and you have to come to either youtube.com/politicsdoneright or go to facebook.com/politicsdoneright or go to our Periscope or go to our Twitch or whatever. We'll see all those messages, my friend. Anyhow, Nancy Pelosi was interviewed on Mitchell Reports today. Andrea Mitchell Reports. And you know, the misdirection of the day today is that since Twitter decided to start correcting lies that Trump puts on Twitter, if it's one of those major lies, they correct it. They give you the truth serum for it. Trump got mad and he's going to create an executive order. So what he did is he made a big hoopla out of it. You see, every day Trump wants to have a new let me tell you, Daniel Ledo, saying that women make better politicians is not a sexist statement. It's a statement of fact. The countries that have best done coronavirus and have done the best with making sure coronavirus is done well are countries run by women. We can look at the Scandinavian country that has run by a woman. We can also look at Germany. And the country that's done the worst are run by right-wing crazy men. Donald Trump, Bolsonaro, and Putin, and a couple others. So, you know, it goes without question. And the reason why is simple. And yes, it's not that women are mentally better than men or whatever. It's that that men in their patriarchal being have put women through certain things that have given women instinctively the empathy necessary to do things right because they know how it feels. It's just like how black people or Latinos, because of the pressure they have been under themselves, have better empathetic behaviors that lend them to be better leaders in several different areas. It's that simple. If you are always the master and in command, you don't have to listen. If at some point you had to listen or mitigate your feelings and all that sort of thing, it makes you a person that can navigate and that can govern better. Women govern better. Punto final. And I'm a man, and I'm just telling you, women govern better. And I have no problem being governed by women at all because, again, governing, what people forget, serving. We can serve by governing and we can serve by serving. Always remember that. It's all about humanity. Anyhow, going back to the issue at hand. So Nancy Pelosi was interviewed by Andrea Mitchell Reports, and she really handled Andrea perfectly, and she really put Donald Trump in his place. And I want to play you the interview. It's not very long, but it's, it also, of course, have my narrative. So here we go. You have got to love Nancy Pelosi. I don't always agree with her, but when she comes on an interview, displays her strength and her intellect, it is second to none. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take this on the other side.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Madam Speaker, thank you for joining us. First of all, your reaction to this proposed crackdown from the White House against the social media companies.
I think it's just typical distraction. 100,000 people, more than 100,000 people have died from the coronavirus. This administration has been a failure in terms of what we're doing on testing, tracing, treating, and isolating people. The president has been a terrible example of not wearing a mask, belittling those who do. So anything he does is a distraction from the problem at hand. People are dying.
As someone
Rome
who
is burning, and all people want to talk about is what he said next about this. That is a success for him. So I just will not go there. It's about testing, testing, testing to open up our schools so our children can go back safely. It's about opening up our economy so that we can flourish. So it's about saving lives. And all of this is a distraction from the problem at hand. We have people dying, and he's talking about one thing and another, and then mobilizes the whole conversation. I just simply won't go there.
Well, but let me just ask you, because the initial reason that Jack Dorsey used for fact-checking him was on mail-in voting, and he is potentially influencing the accuracy, the possibility of the election.
As far as the platforms are concerned, they want two things from the federal government: no regulation and no taxes. And so they cater to the Trump administration all the time. I think that Mark Zuckerberg's statement was a disgrace. And Twitter, they're not taking off any accusations the president's making about Joe Scarborough. They know that's not true. So they do a token thing and think it's okay. So again, I don't know if there's honor among thieves. They only have a business model to make money, not to convey facts. That's what they're about. So again, I see it as a distraction from what is the challenge at hand, which is to save lives. And every day the president comes up with another stunt, and every day the airwaves are full of that stunt without holding him fully accountable for the lives that are lost, because we don't have, under his leadership, an appropriate testing. Now, we do in the HEROES Act. HEROES Act has a robust, rapid testing where we're reaching out to underserved communities of color, which are seriously affected disproportionately, where we're saying that we are going to test, we're going to trace, we're going to treat, we're going to save lives as we engage in isolation and the rest. Other countries have not had the death toll. Some of the other countries haven't. They don't have a vaccine. They don't have any cures, but they do have good practices. And the president is a bad example. We have to keep our eye on the ball of saving lives, to open the economy so that we can come back even stronger working together.
Nancy Pelosi did a hell of a job. Notice what she did. She did 4 specific things. Numero uno, she went ahead and pointed out the incompetence of Donald Trump. She made sure and talked about the stunts that he tries every single day continuously in order for people not to realize that he has killed over 100,000 Americans. Secondly, she went ahead on the attack on social media, specifically Twitter and Facebook, for allowing the president to use their platforms to misinform America without giving them any real pushback. And the little pushback that they gave from Twitter, it was too little, too late. Número tres, she went ahead and she scolded the media. You guys have allowed Trump to come out with stunts, and all his stunts and his misdirections and his smoke and mirrors, you allowed it to be used on your networks to be the message of the day instead of what the real message should be. Americans are dying. Americans are suffering. The president isn't doing what he needs to do. And numero cuatro, she then shows Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, along with the Democrats, they are passing laws, they're passing legislation to make sure that our economy can open again, to make sure that people are tested so that we can start coming back to some level of normalcy. That was an excellent piece by Nancy Pelosi. Oh, yes, I love the way she handled it. And every single Democrat who gets in front of a camera, every single Democrat who writes a blog, every single Democrat, I should say Democrat and progressive, who goes in front of a camera or goes on the radio, go on whatever platform, do not allow Trump to be directing the message. He has lost the right to direct the message. He has lost the right to direct the narrative. He is an incompetent person with a huge dereliction of duty. So therefore, never allow him to use the media or the internet to be the one directing traffic. It is one of the reasons why I ask all of you to share our media, to share our stuff, to become members. Why? Because we have to, he has a lot of money. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and she was saying, I was telling her, progressive media is difficult because, progressive, you have to try to stay alive, and, the other side have all these funding and that kind of stuff. And I said, but we, who offers us, who offers some of us a hell of a lot to turncoat? Trump's people. Trump's people's trying to get a lot of these programs under their domain, singing their message. That is how, look for all those independent bloggers and independent videographers who suddenly became conservative in the next 2 months. Because they're paying quite a bit. They're paying quite a bit. Anyhow, so Nancy Pelosi did it so very, very, very right. Thank you, Nancy. Now, let's see, I'm at 42, so I can go ahead and start talking to, let me see how many messages I got here. Okay, we have, Lawrence Sims says, people watching and pleading, and now some are saying the systemic changes must come. Yeah, but, what Eddie Glaude said was true. We heard the systemic changes were supposed to come during Michael Brown. We heard the systemic changes were supposed to come via Philando Castile. We heard these changes were going to come after each one of these murders by cop. We hear some changes is going to come. No, what I try to tell people, and get this, look, there are a lot of good people, The problem is this. Our police force represents society on steroids. In other words, these police officers are a reflection of society with power. In other words, you have a lot of friends, but you don't know what percentage of them are bad people. And I would say, or people who have disdain for people of color, etc. I would say that in America, you still have a large percentage, right? A majority? Probably not anymore. But a large percentage. And within the police force, it's there. When you see that officer on the neck of that guy, and everybody's saying you're killing the guy, and he can't see it himself, and he doesn't. Do you think this guy wants his life to be over? Do you think this guy really wanted that to be his last day as a police officer? No. This guy was in wide open spaces. This guy, everybody could see him. The only way you would do that, if all the stars line up, even if you cross the line, that your society, the grand jury, which is a bunch of people on your peers, if you are so sure that your people are not going to make sure, they're going to make sure you're not convicted, then you can do as you please, right? And that is what's happening here. The same thing happened in our economic system. The same thing happened. Nancy Pelosi laid out something there. When she says the message of the day, when she says, let's start talking how things really are. You see, we are going to have this flare up with George Floyd, Lawrence Sims, for a few days. And then it dies down. And then even Black Lives Matter and all these organizations, they go on to the next thing, or they go into a reprieve. Politics done right is every day, right? So we're doing this every day. We're trying to keep these things in the news every day. But you go to MSNBC, it's the next flavor of the day. It's the next. So that's the reason why you need them both. You need MSNBC and all these guys to give you the flavor of the day. But you also need those people that can give you persistence. You need you need that. This requires persistence. We can't let this die down. I think the difference, however, with George Floyd, is that we saw that officer's eyes. We saw people pleading for that guy's life. We saw that they treat that dead body like a piece of meat thrown on the stretcher, as Tacho Medellin explained. And when they remember they were on the camera, they didn't have his head flopping as bad as it did. That's what it's all about. Okay, let's see where I'm going to go. Let's see. So, Lawrence, I hope so. It'll only be so, Lawrence, as if you, Lawrence, keep it active. Keep it up, Lawrence. Troy Astro, he wanted to see a black man die and caused a riot. Nah, I don't know, Troy. Send me another message and tell me why you think that. I seen a comic when a woman called 911, then the police were handcuffing bears for an alleged break-in. Huh? What? I see a comic when a woman called 911, then the police were handcuffing beers for an alleged break-in. I think maybe I must not misunderstand. I think she called the cops and then they think she was the perpetrator. I don't know. Is that what you're saying? Let me know. Okay, let's see. Troy, Lawrence Sim says, can't understand why she was able to get off. Why? Oh, you're talking about, in in Houston, I think it's an off-duty, if I remember the story correctly, Lawrence, an off-duty cop choked a guy to death. She and her husband, I believe it was. And, well, that's it. Cops always get off, right? Until they don't. Well, let's make that clear. Because the cop in Minnesota who shot the Australian, he didn't. I wonder why. You guys think about it. Troy Astro. It's a metaphor of young people are falsely accused of a crime. Depend, Troy. Okay, the stereotype, white wants us to be house slaves. We're already debt slaves. Everybody debt slaves right now. You should listen to the program that I did with Professor Richard Wolff. That is how they gave us a semblance of prosperity, Brother Astro. Debt. They didn't want to increase our salaries because that's sort of like permanent, right? It has more permanence. Debt has permanence, but it keeps you permanently enslaved as well, right? So you got something there, Troy Astro. Norman Reynolds, this is an example, a systemic issue. The system is built to keep a tier system. The clutching of pearls does not result in any change because those clutching would have to give up something to make the necessary change. I want to challenge that a bit, Norman. I get what you're saying, right? In a zero-sum gain, white people would have to, let's say what they have was dependent on keeping black people down. I would use that argument. That argument is what the plutocracy want the average white person to believe. In order for you to maintain your status, black people, Indians, Latinos, none of these folks can get their status, right? Because it's at the expense of that enhanced comfort that you have. Who wants to lose the comfort that they have? Who does? Whether you're black, white, or otherwise. That's why you have those people that we call the Uncle Toms. They make it, and they believe that there's only a little slot for them. So we can't allow any other black folk or any other Latinos in the club because the club is limited, and only a few of us can get in. That is their mentality. That is what I call, that is a capitalist mentality of false scarcity. There's a lot of oil, but to keep the oil prices high, we have to have a cartel that limits how much can be produced so that the price would be able to go up. We have a lot of gold, but we keep a cartel on gold. We keep a cartel on diamonds. False scarcity. Water. We are surrounded by water. Even salt water can be made to drink efficiently. But we keep a scarcity of water so that bottled water companies can make a lot of money and pollute further with plastics. And then we are going to create another company to clean up the plastics that we use our product to mess up. You see, capitalism believes in something called false scarcity. In college, you learn of it as being scarce resources. And that's why they then define it as the efficient allocation of resources is capitalism, right? It's a lie. But that's what they've been taught. The Powell Manifesto ensures that you learn that from birth. But it's a lie. The scarcity of oil, we wish there was scarcity of oil to prevent the burning of it. But there's no real scarcity of oil in the context of what we need. There's no real scarcity of water in the context of what we need. There is no scarcity in arable land to farm in what we need. Capitalism is the entity that creates environmental problems and all these problems because you have to create a system where you have a bunch of people, a small amount of people on top, where then you enslave others with that tier system that you're talking about, Norman. That tier system, you have to create these false scarcity and you have to create these, you have to make each level believe that They want to be you, so you got to keep them down. You got to keep them down if you want to come up. That is what we have to start teaching our people. We have to start teaching the lesson because we've been fooled for our entire lives. We've been fooled. We've been fooled. That is it. We've been fooled. Rose replying to Troy, believe me, the folks on the top like everyone to be in debt slaves. Many people just don't realize it. You know, Rose, you're so damn smart. That's why, you know, you were on this show with Medicare for All. Love you, girl. Love you. All right, Paul Fleming. Black Americans strapped up saying enough is enough had never worked. Paul, you are calling for revolution, Paul. I don't preach revolution. Well, not armed revolution. I think we can do it without arms. Brother Reynolds, Paul, I think it's not just black people. It is white people. Norman, genius. Norman, you are a genius. The tier system was developed to keep us, not the 1% apart. Right, Oprah and Bill Gates. You will never see Oprah and Bill Gates doing anything together to make it better, really, really better for the people down below. And that's what I try to tell people. It's all about green and it's all about the tier class system. But you can only maintain the tier class system by having externalities like racism, like sexism, like homophobia. And this has been for generations. This has been for millennia. Paul Fleming, as a black business consultant traveling the Southeast, I had a gun pulled on me by the state troopers in the different states. This hearkened to me before they started pulling the trigger. I left my job of 12 years because I needed to be around for my wife and kids. Paul, I am so sorry for that. I understand, my brother. I understand. Rose, Norman, you are right. This system has been applied successfully for centuries. You see, there you go with the right answer again, Rose. Brother Curtis, Jacobs, look, too much talk. We need elected officials that will do their jobs. My heart is very saddened to see the cop with the knee on our throat and an economy with the knees on everybody's throat. Well, Rose's daughter is watching. Rose's daughter, thank you so kindly for watching. You know, thank you so kindly. Daniel Ledoux, what a sexist statement because I said women make better leaders. Daniel think it's a sexist statement. And then he says, you're a racist and sexist. How does it feel? I guess I'm a racist and a sexist. I will ask all my white brothers and sisters on screen. Does anyone think I'm a racist and a sexist? To my white brothers and sisters, am I a white racist and a white sexist? Please tell me. Put an answer in there for me. Cover me here. I want to see what you have to say. Okay. Bikir Yidis is on Periscope. I don't know what that means, brother Bikir. I think I know what that means, but I won't say it because it will be too obvious. And then, of course, we have 69 G2 Man says, yes, science says the mask has no effect. Duh. Brother 69 G2 Man, the mask does have effect. Let me tell you something. Put a mask on and sneeze. Take a mask off and sneeze. Do the same and cough. Thank you, William. So, I'm sorry, Ledo. William Fitzpatrick says, I'm neither a racist nor am I a sexist. So, I think you're wrong, brother. Anyhow, so yeah. Listen, if you sneeze and the distance goes less than, I'm sorry, you're wrong. So, it does work. It does work. So, thank you so kindly. Anyhow, folks, we're getting close to the end of the show. I really want to thank you all for spending all this time with me. Thank you so kindly. Rose Williams says, what a joke. Racist, sexist? Don't think so. Thank you, my dear sister. Okay, anyhow, folks, I want to remind you that this is a political show that does need your support. So please consider supporting our show. And how do you do that? You can do that easily. You can just go ahead and go to patreon.com/politics done right. Again, that is patreon.com/politics done right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick that in there in a minute. If you go to, let's see, there we go. If you go to Patreon, patreon.com/politics done right, you can become subscribe for less than what it costs a coffee, man. And that's how we get our stuff done. You can also contribute via paypal.me/politics done right. paypal.me/politics done right. You know, I saw this at I saw one of my brothers doing his video show on, but he's huge. He has a humongous audience. You guys are eventually going to give me a humongous audience. I know that. But this guy has a huge audience. And he was like, oh, he got PayPal.me and all that kind of stuff. I am still trying to figure out. I am writing a new book that's going to be out pretty soon called How to Become a Blogger and a Vlogger and Still Eat. You know, I'm working. I haven't decided on the name yet. So that is my next book. I think I'm putting that in between the book that I'm supposed to have out, which is Utopia book. And the reason I'm holding off on the Utopia book is I'm waiting a little bit into the election to see what else I need to write in there because I want it to be pretty darn current. So anyhow, so you can go to, if you want to help us out, paypal.me/politicsdoneright. If you want to subscribe as well, please go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. patreon.com/politicsdoneright. And don't forget to go to our store. Get a t-shirt, get a mug, and I showed you the mug before, right? Here's the mug. And I have, actually, this is just one of the mugs. I think this is one of the cheaper mugs. The more expensive mug is too expensive for me. No, I'm kidding. And but you can also get our t-shirts. I'm not showing you that thing again. Egberto, ¿por qué estás así? Tienes que hacerlo mejor. Okay, here we go with it. But don't forget, you can also get this at the store. As I see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. On the screen, you can see all the different things that we have there. The store.politicsdoneright.com has also my book, Lose Weight and Be Fit Now. Lose Weight and Be Fit Now. Anyhow, folks, I really thank you so kindly for spending this time with me. I know that you have the option to watch. There's so much on the internet. You have the option to do as you please. That you spend your time with me, I am very appreciative. I am very, what is the other word? Endeared to you. Please support the show. Please share the show. Please comment on the show. If you would like to be on the show in a segment, tell me what you want us to talk about. Let's do a Zoom and we can talk. And we can put you on air. If you want to do something, this is your show. And I want everybody to have a platform. Hell, if Daniel Ledo wants to come on the show as well, Daniel, you are welcome. This show belongs to us all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this, baby. I am what? Out. I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel and please leave me some comments. Thank you very much.